So there's I want to pose a content warning, trigger warning for sexual assault, and harassment, aggression, child labor, and capitalism. So I saw this clip circulating of Drew Barrymore and Brooke Shields recently. I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, but then I deleted it because I tend to get misinterpreted easily, and the post didn't leave enough room for nuance. So I took it down and I decided to just focus on the blog instead. I've talked about this topic before. I'm not sure if I've talked about it publicly or if I've just ranted about it in public. No, not in public, in private in my journal. Anyways, in the clip, Drew Barrymore says, I think that you and I, she's talking to Brooke Shields, I think that you and I have taken such incredible accountability for our lives. We never put the blame on people. We act strong and not broken or victim. Like that has always been our narrative. Again, and then Brooke Shields says, you can't teach somebody that. We started so young. Started so young as in working. And so therein lies my point. We commend these things, this idea of like not being broken, of not being a victim, right, of not blaming others, of being accountable, but we forget that they're also byproducts of avoiding the issues when we're using work to run from, which is what they proved at the second part of the clip, is they didn't even identify with the Me Too movement because they hadn't had time to process what it is that they've been through. So if you've never had that time, or if you don't see yourself as somebody who went through sexual assault or harassment or whatever it is your experiences is, who are you going to hold accountable if you don't even know that something happened to you, right? And sometimes we can confuse accountability for blame. People be like, oh, you're blaming. No, like, accountability is not always blame. There is definitely blame, right? Feeling into your emotions does not necessarily mean you're broken. Being a victim, sometimes there are victims, right? If you haven't survived certain things and you identify with that victim narrative, then that's also very valid. But like they proved, when you're always constantly working, you don't have that time to sit down and process what you're going through. You're not going to identify with any of these, no shade, but that would be your narrative if you're constantly working, especially if you've been working since a young age. When are you going to have time to be like, wow, this person really did this to me. That was not wrong. Wow, I really don't know how to set boundaries. Maybe I can work on my self-confidence. If you don't have that time to do any of that kind of work, because you're always on the go. And so I think what this clip showed me was why so many of us critique capitalism, because it doesn't leave room for any of us to really be human, or to have enough downtime to process the low points of our lives, or to fully celebrate the high points of our lives, right? Healing from trauma is not light work. Sitting with the difficult emotions is not weak. It's actually, it can be really hard. Contrary to what people believe. And like, I used to think that once upon a time as well too, and I still do if I'm being honest, right? Where, you're crying is weakness. Talking about your feelings is weakness. It's looked at as snitching. It's, like they said in the clip, you're playing victim. You love to feel sorry for yourself. All of these different things that sometimes we can get stuck into. I definitely have had those moments, and I can get into that as well too. But what I also do know is that doing emotional and psychological work can be really difficult, right? It's not manual labor, but it is a form of work. And doing it in isolation is not the best solution. And that's what the pandemic felt like for some of us, right? You were in isolation. You're doing it in isolation. Trust me, I've tried. I still do. It sucks. I will highly not recommend. Even in community, it's still hard. So you will sometimes need to or want to use necessary coping distractions, right? And that can include addictive vices like drugs, sex, wine, alcohol, working out, all the different things that we use to cope that we then become dependent on. Again, this is no shame on the different things that we find addictive. As others have said, I believe that addiction is a valid response to some of the stresses of our lives, given how they're tied again to capitalism and more serious things, it makes sense why people become addicted. Food is delicious, right? Like you would understand why somebody has a food addiction. And so Drew and Brooke talk about not identifying with the Me Too movement because they hadn't had that time to make sense of their life experiences. Mind you, them not having time is not the exact same thing as poor people not having time, right? We have to be real about this. A lot of celebrities can afford assistance that many poor people cannot, and these poor people are also working overtime, right? A lot of celebrities can afford to have nannies, chefs, different assistants. They have stylists. They have people buying their groceries. Like they can pay people to help support them. Whereas a lot of poor folks might, if they're lucky, they have family, but then they're paying for daycare, which is expensive. They're cooking their own food, or you're eating fast food, whatever it is that's convenient. Like there's so many different things that makes them not relatable. They seem to think they're very relatable to people, and not to say that aspects of their life are not relatable, but I think sometimes rich people feel like they're way more relatable than they are, especially to poor folks. I digress. So this part of the issue with capitalism and how it exploits poor people, they really, hi babe, they really don't have enough time. When you're constantly working, you don't have enough time to do the emotional and psychological healing, even if you wanted to, right? Like, how do you work 12 hours and more a day, come home, care for your kids, spend time with your partner if you have one, commune with friends and family, and then have enough time for yourself and me time? Where do you fit in therapy? Where do you find time to journal? How do you make sense of the different forms of violence that you've survived if you don't have time to do it? Even if you wanted to do it, like it's impossible. It's a lot. So I want to make clear that I have empathy for that. There's a lot of privilege that comes with it. It is in many ways a luxury to do this kind of work. I saw Trisha Hersey recently saying it's not luxury, it's care, right? It's care. And I mean, I agree with that as well too. But rest is expensive. Rest is very expensive, right? It's something that everybody can afford. Again, that's not how it should be, but that is how it is. But we also do need to make sense of that victim to survivor transition, right? If we had more time to be able to sit down and just enjoy ourselves or enjoy each other, that is healing, not everyday therapy. Just being able to commune with people can be therapeutic. Spending time in nature, swimming, working out, all of these different things can be really healing. It doesn't always have to be heavy. And so there's so many factors that play into this, including class privileges. I'm also saying that therapy is not always for everybody. Not everybody wants to heal. Not everybody should heal, especially not alone. Not everybody wants to rehash the past, and that's okay, right? Therapy isn't for everyone. It can be very individualistic. It's very expensive for a lot of people. It can be re-traumatizing. It can place the blame on the individuals, whereas a structural and the systemic just completely gets avoided or dismissed, right? We are in these environments that cause us a lot of these issues, and then we're left to deal with by ourselves. And so that's all I wanted to say is for that some people are rushing back to work because it's a lot of work. It's uncomfortable. So that's all. Until next time, in solidarity. Please like, subscribe, share, donate to my I don't have a GoFundMe. PayPal if you want at D Archives. Okay, thanks.